Hey, how's it going, guys? Ancient Rune here, back with another Once Human build video, and today I'll be going over my Hazardous Object build. This gun is a top-tier mobbing pistol that you can use on any unstable bomber build as a secondary, or having it be a primary weapon. Now, this is one of my favorite weapons in Once Human because it acts like a D-tier weapon from Borderlands, with its reloading the whole magazine gimmick, making it feel truly unique. Its mobbing power comes from its easy spammability and radius and its very good damage. Where it falls off though is bossing, especially Monoliths, to where it can take longer to kill than other builds, and that's where using a different weapon can be better. Personally, if I want to, I just swap to a fully different build when I get to a boss via loadouts. This version is focusing on staying at high HP instead of the low HP meta, as it's something I don't enjoy and like being able to take some hits. So with that, you will see my overall DPS being lower than others, but still more than viable to clear content easily. But despite that, I will still mention options for low HP with lunar mods, as well as being able to take advantage of downstar mods and the related Starfall inversion tech. I also want you to keep in mind the damage I'm showing is not peak for my build, as I'm still farming for even better rolls for everything, but the base build itself works amazing, so you can hit even better results than me. Now let's get into it. Alright, so first off with the weapon, we have the bullets. Hitting enemies grants a 20% chance to trigger Unstable Bomber. Because we are not shooting and only reloading, this will not proc or matter at all. But with everything else, it will matter. Reloading time is minus 40%, and the reload action is replaced by throwing your weapon, consuming all ammo to deal blast damage to targets within a 3-meter range, equal to 50% plus consumed ammo times 18% of PSI intensity, capping at 480%. The effect benefits from Unstable Bomber's damage and range. Throwing the weapon grants 75% chance to recover 75% of consumed ammo and a 25% chance to recover 25% of consumed ammo. So this helps with the ammo cost of this gun, and then Unstable Bomber damage and range is increased by 10% for 10 seconds each time Unstable Bomber deals damage, up to 50%. And so an important thing to note is that this reload effect is not Unstable Bomber damage. So anything that's based around a proccing Unstable Bomber, reloading will not proc this. And then actual shooting with the first part, Unstable Bomber will proc it, but that's not the focus here. We do have some secondaries and stuff that help with that, but for this gun itself, it does not. It still gets the Unstable Bomber damage and range, but it's not like the damage source of it, so it can't proc those effects. Okay, and then Unstable Bomber, you have this formula here, but it doesn't actually take this part. It just takes for the reload part down here. So you've got all the formula out here, but it still does not crit, cannot strike weak spots, and will not decay with distance. And also, it is blast element still. Then for the calibration, we are going rapid shot style. This is for the increased magazine. We do get less attack, but it ends up still being better damage, having those extra bullets from the magazine. Then you'll just want to go the double elemental roll. For the accessories, the only thing that really matters is the extended pistol mag. This will give increased magazine capacity, which just means more damage. And then for the ammo, we are looking at tungsten pistol AP ammo. There is a couple other things, but this still consumes a lot of ammo and can be expensive. So I like to keep it to this ammo. You would not go blasting AP ammo unless you are triggering Unstable Bomber beforehand, as again, the reload does not trigger Unstable Bomber. You also have some other stuff like suppression, penetration, and peregrine, which could all be used as well. It can, again, just take a lot. I think really getting these extra ammos would just help with bossing a little bit more than anything. Now for the secondary, my main thing I go is the bingo, as this has a 70% chance to trigger the bullseye upon hitting a weak spot. But the main thing is going to be after switching weapons, the first hit will trigger the bullseye. And what bullseye is a 8% damage boost for 12 seconds, and you'll know it's activated by enemies being outlined. Now, a couple enemies aren't outlined, so you do want to keep that in mind, but for the most part, they will be. And what's great with taking advantage of switching weapons is because we only need to shoot it once. So you basically just hold, like, you'll hold your main weapon, swap to the bingo, shoot, and then it's applied, and then you can just go and start throwing. And you don't even have to hit a weak spot for it. Remember, you can just hit the body shot, because any shot of that part will apply. Then the weak spot damage and the attack increase don't matter because, again, Unstable Bomber cannot hit a weak spot. And then an alternative to the bingo is going to be the Wildfire, 60% chance of triggering bullseye when hitting a target. That's basically all we have here that would help. This is good if an enemy doesn't have a weak spot, but since we still have that swapping to with the first hit, the bingo is just going to be the better option. And then this is technically peak damage for this, which you're mainly going to be looking at for bossing, is going to be the Gold Lure. This has a 30% chance to trigger Unstable Bomber on hit. The chance increases to 90% when hitting a weak spot. Each enemy defeated reduces Unstable Bomber's range by 10%, with damage increased to 20% for 30 seconds, up to 5 stacks. This means that we will get a 100% damage boost, and this is why I say for bossing is because of the decrease of range. So basically, you can just go around like silos and kill some enemies first, and then when you hit the boss, you should have some stacks. But you could also throw out some of the sticky ice crystals like this. And then we'll get this reloaded real quick. And then you'll see I have 3 stacks here of the buff. It won't let me show up, but that right there is the buff with 3 stacks. And you can get it up to a max of 5. It's not something I use often, but it definitely is something you can do. And it says Unstable Bomber is guaranteed to deal crit damage. And then with every weak spot damage, Unstable Bomber damage is increased. So this will only matter for this gun, and we're not building around it. So you can take some bonuses to help it, but since it's crit damage and weak spot stuff, it doesn't really matter. We do have 90% weak spot damage on the gun itself, so I'm assuming that's 90% Unstable Bomber damage, which is kind of crazy. But if not, then it still doesn't matter. It does kills pretty well. And then where you get the sticky ice crystal is going to be the ice pot deviation, which you can get from Way of Winter or Endless Dream scenarios. Then for the melee weapon, you are looking for a kukri. This will increase your PSI intensity by 20% when defeating an enemy with the heavy strike. And we're back to the sticky ice crystals. You can get this out for an enemy kill, and then just hold down melee while holding a different gun, and you've got that stack up. The attack and the crit rate don't really matter here, so I would not worry about that. All right, and then we have 2 choices for your deviation. The first one is going to be the Shattered Maiden. This will inflict slowdown and chained to stun bosses in front of them when attacking, and the most important part is going to be the explosion damage of 80%. So that is going to be the main thing we have going. And then you also have the alternative of the Mini Feaster, which will gain a status damage up to 80%. Now, I did find for personally, I had a lot more status damage than I did elemental damage. This doesn't account for all buffs currently right now, but I found that if I was using the Mini Feaster, I was not having a lot more elemental damage. So I would probably try and go Shattered Maiden. I heard sometimes it just doesn't work, so you do want to keep that in mind. But basically, in the end, you will just choose whatever helps your damage bonus the most. All right, and then before we get into the gear, make sure to like the video if you have enjoyed so far, and subscribe to the channel for more Once Human content, and consider becoming a member to get videos early. So for our key gear, we have the Viper Mask. This is going to increase our unstable bomber range, and for every 2% increase in range, gain 1% more unstable bomber damage. So this right here will give us 25% unstable bomber damage, and I would assume the range here will increase it, but I'm not sure. I feel like I've heard conflicting things. Um, I also have unstable bomber range in here just because it's the best thing I've gotten so far. But it still works out at least 25% and increases the range. And range is very important as this is a mobbing focused build. Now for the gear sets, I like to go the 2-piece Shelterer, 2-piece Savior, and 1-piece Renegade. We go the Renegade for the reload speed. You do also have the Lone Wolf, which has the mag size boost, and I did compare the two, and the reload speed ended up being better DPS here. And then we just have the Shelter for the elemental damage. You could also change this out for Blackstone. And then the Savior top here we have for the status damage while above 70% health, as well as getting that medicine cooldown haste. Now, if you want to go a slightly lower HP build, then you can go with the Treacherous set, which is right here, and you can go the 2-piece for 12% status damage, and then you can get the 2-piece Shelter or Blackstone, and then 1-piece Renegade for that reload speed. Or you can go for even higher damage at lower HP. You can go the 30% max sanity and get up to 50% increased status damage, and then go the 2-piece Shelterer with all this here, and you would just give up the reload speed, which is fine. This was just kind of extra anyways. And then how you can keep that low HP with the Treacherous set is going to be the easy way with the Sanity Corrosion capsules. You could just easily make a lot of them by getting random food and then letting it spoil and collecting purified water, and just spam a couple of these to be at low sanity. This is the easiest way. There are a couple others, like you can just go spoil food and then get the antibiotic to heal the gastric discomfort that this spoiled food could cause. But I think the Sanity Corrosion capsules is just easier to have on you. And then for the mask, I like to take advantage of the Starfall inversion. So I go Starfall down, which increases status damage while airborne. You can also go some other stuff. Like ideally, you would probably get the Dreamy Rabbit Fur, which is 6% elemental damage. Or you could just go regular Rabbit Fur. I wouldn't go Lucky Rabbit Fur because we're not shooting to score any crits. But then you also do have Wool, which will help get status damage as well if you need it. Or you could go the Golden Wool and worry about trying to get that status damage on there. You also have Cave Fair-Skin, which gives elemental damage while crouched, but we're never doing that. Then you have status damage while dampened, which isn't really that good. And then you have the Lunar Rabbit Fur and Lunar Wool if you're going low HP. And then we have the Dream Fused Rabbit Fur and Wool as well. All right, and then for the mods, first we're going to go over the passives you'll want. For your weapon and your mask, you are going to be looking for Unstable Bomber, as you will get Unstable Bomber damage and Blast damage. You could also get Unstable Bomber range for increased radius, and that will help a lot as well. I found I was lacking Blast damage, so I would probably try and get this on here if you can, as we already have Unstable Bomber damage, and we already have a pretty large radius going. And then you'll want either Great Ones, Normal, or Elite. I don't use this on Great Ones because it's not a big boss build, so really just Elites and or Normals will go really well. I'd definitely focus the Elites, as that will be the main thing in the way for silos. And then if you go low HP, you can go Lunar, which will give increased elemental damage and status damage. And then you can also go the normal, elite, or great ones. And then if you want to take advantage of the downstar mods, you would go elemental or status damage. What's really nice about this is that it gives the same amount as the other mods, but it also has a little extra. So if you have good ones, you may as well. If you have a boss where you end up being like just higher than, then that's really nice. And then if you want to know how to take advantage of the Starfall stuff, then you can use the gravity neutralizer. You will just activate it, jump, and then either hold jump again, or you will ADS like this or like this, and it will hold you in the air like that. Now, you won't be as high if you don't have the Starfall inversion stuff, but we'll go over some ways to help that later. Now with gloves, or just if you don't want any of those other special types of mods, you'll just go talents for the elemental damage and then the status damage here. You also have the option of magazine size and reload speed. I haven't messed with those, but I just prefer having everything else going. And then the normal great ones or elites down here. All right, and now for the mods themselves. For the Hazardous Object, you are going the Reckless Bomber. The reason for this is going to be because nothing else helps. Unstable Bomber inflicts stagger on enemies. This isn't technically Unstable Bomber, so this does nothing. Restoring magazine size doesn't do anything. And then triggering Unstable Bomber doesn't proc from this reload, so that doesn't help. So you just have this. You do have 8% crit rate, so you do get 4% unstable bomber damage from here. So it's good, but really just technically any unstable bomber mod you have with good passives will work. Then for the secondary with the gold floor, you are looking again just for anything with good passives. I don't really have anything too good right now. I would probably go with the supercharge when triggering a stable bomber grants increased unstable bomber damage and can stack up to 6 times. And then if going any of the bullseye stuff, you are going to use vulnerability amplifier, which will add an extra 8% vulnerability, which will mean that 8% damage boost is now 16%. And then for the melee weapon, it doesn't really matter. I got this mod that increases melee damage, which just means it's easier to get a kill of the sticky ice cube. Then for the hat, we go Deviation Expert. This gives increased status damage, and nothing else helps. And then the mask mod doesn't really matter. It's just any damage because it says before the bomb explodes, but we're not really getting hits. So as long as you have a good passive unstable bomber mod, that's what you're going to go. Mine is not good at all, so I'm still farming for a better one, but that's what to look out for. And then for the top, you'll basically just go any mod that has good passives. I have Rejuvenating here because I have a high HP version, and with the good passives here. For the legs, this also does not matter, as this reloading when magazine is empty, even though it does empty, this does not stack at all. So anything with good passives here will work. Nothing else around here will be helpful. Then for the gloves, you either want status damage or elemental damage based off of how much damage increase you need. So just go up with that. And then for the shoes, we go the covered advance, as taking no damage for 4 seconds will increase status damage for 30 seconds. And this effect resets when the duration ends. So during those 30 seconds, if you take damage, it's fine. It doesn't reset. But if you take damage during those 4 seconds, it does matter. Then if you're going low HP with the 30%, then you can go Rush Hour, as this will give a 28% status damage freeze compared to the 20% of covered advance. But it's a really small difference, so it doesn't matter in the end, and probably just go with better whatever has better passives. And now for the Cradle here. First, we have Anti-Coherence, which will increase our damage with pistols. Then we have Aerial Suppression, which will give us increased damage reduction against enemies when we are airborne. Rapid Aid, which decreases the medical usage cooldown. Status Enhancement when hitting a weak spot. So this can be good for you to hit a weak spot during bosses when hitting with that bingo for the debuff, as we can get this status enhancement. Then we have Deviation Energy Defense for a shield and gives damage reduction. Then we have Tactical Leap, which will gain us increased damage against every enemy. It says Deviance, but it's everything. Then we go Elemental Sense. After dealing elemental damage, gain increased elemental damage. And then you have some flexible stuff, because this is explosive bonus. After triggering unstable bomber damage increased by 5 seconds, up to 25 stacks. This does not proc from Hazardous Object from the reloads. So you could technically put this elsewhere. If you are using the gulp lore, you can use this as when you're stacking the gulp lore, you'll get this bonus. And with the gulp lore, you could also say take out aerial suppression and go anti-phase, or take out rapid aid instead. And that anti-phase just helps with getting extra damage on gulp lore to get the kill you need. All right, and then for the food, first off, we have the mixed fried hot dog. This will use to increase damage by 20% against enemies affected by bullseye. So if you're using bullseye stuff, this will be the go-to. If you have chef or just not using bullseye, then you will be looking for popcorn, which will increase unstable bomber damage by 10%, or layered galaxy, which grants a 30% elemental damage boost while airborne. You'll notice I'm not mentioning bone and deviated sausage just because I'm not really doing much with bossing on this build, so I really wouldn't do it for this. And then for the drink, your go-to is going to be the whimsical drink for the increased status effect damage. And if you have chef, or just as a different choice, you have the Stardust energy drink. You have this to double jump, which means you can get higher on enemies, which means you can get that damage boost with the Downstar mods. And then for the playstyle, it's pretty simple. You basically just spam reload while having all your buffs around. So what you're going to make sure is you have all your food buffs active and also your deviant active. And I don't have my food buffs active besides a double jump, and that's fine. And then have either your secondary ready with the bingo or the gulp lore, and again, gulp lore stacks from enemies while getting to the boss, or with the sticky ice crystal. But then we're also going to want to throw another sticky ice crystal, but first I'm going to get this on the enemy, and then we're going to hold the bingo here because that's what I'm using. Double jump, activate gravity neutralizer, double jump, do that, and then spam reload. And you'll see I'm getting a lot of damage going per reload, which is crazy. And this is without the high damage version. I hope you guys enjoyed the build video. If you have any questions or any suggestions for improvements, make sure to comment down below. The mobbing potential of this gun is insane while not being too ammo hungry because of its huge radius, meaning it hits tons of enemies. While bossing isn't the best, you can still brute force it if you just have this build, or if you want to stick to the theme. And this is mainly just going with silos and not the monoliths, because those guys have a lot more HP than the hazardous object can practically clear. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Once Human content, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.